All right, and I will turn it over now to our presenters for today, Kelly Dodd and Dawn Vanderkoy of 211.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Dodd. I'm with the United Way of New York State and 211 New York. And today I'm presenting with my former colleague, Dawn Vanderkoy. Dawn?
Hi everyone. My name is Dawn Vanderkoy. I'm the current director of 211 Western New York. We cover the 7 counties of Western New York.
Thanks. So today we're going to talk about 211 housing and homelessness services. So we'll do a brief overview about 211, kind of what it is in general, and then we'll talk about some resources available to help with, oh, I didn't update that, not with food, but with housing. And the different resources that are available to help with housing. We know that housing is a big need in communities, not just in Western New York, but across the state and across the country. I think, first, I just want to recognize that we are in a national housing crisis. And, this is a crisis that in a lot of communities pre-existed COVID, but was made exponentially worse by the pandemic. And the economic consequences of the pandemic, as well as some of the interventions that kept people housed during the pandemic, may have had some other side effects as well. So I think basically what I want to say is, we recognize that there are no easy answers to this housing crisis. And we just wanted to present you all with some tools and resources that may help to assist as folks are navigating these really challenging, difficult challenges in their lives. So I guess just to say this is not a fix-all for everything, and we fully recognize that. So we'll talk about housing resources, utility assistance, how to help folks keep housing, some emergency housing options. And then because it is a crisp fall day, we'll also do a little bit of help for the holidays and talk about how you can use 211 to help serve your patrons. So what is 211? 211 was designated by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, in 2000 as the 3-digit phone number to connect communities to local services and resources, health and human services. So just like 911 or 411, people call it, you just dial 3 numbers, and we have a conversation and we connect folks to services. 211 is also a website that connects you to a directory of community resources, and that directory is built on the database of services in a community. So we are finding out information on all the different nonprofits, the government agencies, the services that they offer, things like eligibility, et cetera, so that we can connect people to the services in their community. But I think the really important thing about 211 to know about 211 is that it's people driven, right? It's a person that's going to listen to you, going to help you problem solve, going to be non-judgmental, and really going to help you with your specific situation or your patron specific situation. So we're not AI, we're not a Google search. We're a human person that's going to provide empathy and compassion for the situation and ask some probing questions to really try to get you to the services that are specific to the situation that you're facing. So what are some of the goals of 211 New York? Similar to libraries, we want to make sure provide access to information. Specifically, we're providing access to information about health and human services in a community. But we want to make sure that people are aware of the services that are available to help them with a given situation. A lot of people will call 211, we'll have that conversation with them, and we'll make some referrals to community agencies. And frequently, we'll hear something like, I had no idea this service existed, or I didn't even know this was available. So one of the things, we want to do is just increase the access to this kind of information. 211 is also a tool for helping professionals. So whether you're working in a human services agency, working in a library, or just helping people in general, we want to help the helpers. So one of the more efficient ways to get folks connected to these services is using 211. And then I think, again, importantly, we're facing a crisis of loneliness as well as a housing crisis in our country. And 211 creates connection or facilitates connection. So whether it's, that in-person conversation with in-person or over the phone conversation with someone, connecting you to a resource in the community that you didn't know existed, or connecting you to services that are going to help facilitate connections. So those are really important roles that 211 plays in a community. So what kind of services does 211 typically connect people to? It's kind of the wide range of health and human services that are available in a community. So if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, everything from, basic needs at the bottom all the way up to the top to, those things for self-actualization. So food and housing really, and security services really fall into that bottom level. But we also have things like educational services, sports and health services, those kinds of, higher level other services that are available. 211 is available nationwide. So whether you're talking to someone who's maybe concerned about their mother in Florida, or has a sister in Arizona that's facing some challenges, and you're spending hours a week on the phone with her, helping her navigate that, 211 is available to support that. So you can call 211 in your local community, and they can connect you to the 211 provider in Florida or in Arizona to find out what services are available for your loved one. 211 is also available in all of Canada. So during the pandemic, the Canadian federal government recognized how helpful 211 was for people who are navigating this new COVID landscape that we were living through, and made 211 available nationwide in Canada. And this is kind of what 211 looks like in New York. So we have 10 regional providers, or 10 regions in the state, and we have 8 regional providers that serve those communities. So we're really emphasizing kind of the local nature of the 211 services in New York State. So you can see we have 3 providers in the Finger Lakes region, 1 provider in Western New York, 1 in the Susquehanna region, 1 downstate, and 1 in Central New York. And then we also have on Long Island, the Middle County Public Library System actually maintains and curates the 211 database for 211 Long Island. So on to our housing services and programs. So housing is one of the larger needs that 211 hears from callers in our communities. And there are some resources available to help assist with housing. Dawn, feel free to jump in whenever.
Yeah, I can hop in now if you'd like.
Sure.
So in Western New York, so far this year, the housing calls are about 1/4 of the calls that we receive, so all those related to housing. And to touch back a little bit about what Kelly had said before about it's a personal connection. So we're just not a phone book per se of health and human service agencies. We really want to talk to the individual, find out what they're experiencing. We get a little nosy, but I like to say we're nosy with a purpose. We're going to have that conversation and ask some of those questions to really get a feel of what's happening with someone, what they're experiencing, and how best we can connect them to those resources that will help them with what they need. And Kelly did mention that we are in a housing crisis, and that is all across, the country, but also specifically because, I'm here in Western New York. We see it all across the counties that we cover. So when someone calls and presents a situation with their housing, we're going to ask some questions. First is, can I have your zip code? It helps us find the programs that they're eligible for based on where they live, first off. And then we're going to find out what the issue is, if they're getting evicted, if their rent was raised, if there's other housing issues, that, there's things that need to be fixed that their landlord's not taking care of. Their furnace went out. Like, there's just a whole list of things that we can help with. So there are agencies that provide housing search assistance, and they will talk to those individuals, find out, what their income is, what housing size they're looking for, and help them fill out those applications for any programs that may exist in any like housing that would have an application to access or get approved to gain housing at those locations. Like the income-based housing options. So whether it's public housing or private subsidized housing, those are typically based on your rent's based on the income that you have. And you may have heard of Section 8. So locally, in Erie County, at least, Section 8 has a really long wait list, but in other counties, there's not such a long wait list. And those are the things that we would advise callers of. And while we're getting nosy and asking lots of questions, one of those would be, do you mind if I ask your age, or what age range are you? So that way we can help connect folks to if they're eligible for senior housing, or if they have a physical disability that may open them up for other housing options as well. And then there's New York Connects. So how we utilize New York Connects is another resource, and they can help individuals who are disabled or a senior talk about what other housing options may be available. So like if assisted living, maybe something they're looking at, or skilled nursing facilities, just so they know what all their options are pertaining to housing, again, to better help those folks get connected to those resources.
And we did have a question in the chat before we move to the next slide. Is it available in languages other than English? And yes, so we do have staff on hand who are bilingual and can speak in languages other than English. We also use over-the-phone translation services that provide over-the-phone translation in up to over 170 languages. So that's, someone can call as long as they're able to communicate what language they need interpretation in. We'll get that interpreter on the line and then conduct as we normally would. So great question. Thank you for asking. So there are some programs that are available that will help pay for housing for folks who are looking for rental assistance or rent assistance. There are both one-time and ongoing payment options or support subsidies. There's also income-based or subsidized rental units where the household is only typically paying about 30% of their income towards rent. There are also programs that provide assistance to folks who are looking to buy a home. So that could be down payment assistance. That could be a matched savings program to help someone pay for that down payment. And then also some assistance with finding mortgages. One of the things that came up a lot was during the COVID pandemic was people who have trouble paying their mortgages, in part because they were not working because of the pandemic, and there were resources available for that. They tend to be not as widely available as some rent assistance payments, but there are those as well. And then as it was 47 degrees this morning when I got in my car and folks are starting to turn on their heat, we also wanted to mention that there are utility assistance programs available. I think one of the more widely known ones, but still underutilized, is the HEAP program. And that's a heating assistance program, heat payment assistance program that actually has a fairly high income threshold. It's higher than food stamps is, so a lot of people who are eligible may not realize that they're eligible for this benefit, And we encourage folks to apply. They can also, of course, call 211 to find out more information about those income guidelines and how they can apply. But New York has made it easier to apply for HEAP online. That is something you can do without necessarily having to go into the local Department of Social Services to do. Don, can you share some information maybe on some local Western New York rent payment programs that might be available?
And I don't mean to chuckle a little bit, but during COVID, there were rather robust programs available to help with rent payment assistance. And now we're kind of back to pre-pandemic assistance. So typically rent payment assistance, if it's ongoing assistance like Section 8, or folks may qualify for Department of Social Services assistance to help with their rent. If you are behind in your rent, there may be some programs available that can help pay your rent to get you caught up, depending on what that looks like. But also, if you're able to pay your rent going forward, because an agency is not going to pay for back rent if you can't continue to pay your rent. And these are some of the questions that we would be talking to callers about, just to see so we could help them kind of avoid frustrations from trying all these places and finding this information out. So we provide them with that, you're behind in your rent. Are you able to pay your rent going forward? Do you have any eviction notice? Things like that to make sure that they have all the information they need, or the information that we can provide to hopefully avoid that frustration and a waste of their time, frankly, going to apply for things they're not eligible for or won't get. And then there's subsidized rentals, which usually you have to apply for, which Kelly said usually 30% of your 30% of your income would be what your rent would cost. There are programs available for individuals to help get assistance buying a home, which I think are underutilized in the community, and people aren't aware of those things and may think that buying a home is well out of their reach. But there are programs that individuals may be able to get assistance and only have to give maybe $1,000 to actually buy a home and become a homeowner. And those are really great programs. For rent payment assistance and like mortgage payment assistance, going back to those things, people typically have to be behind. And one of the programs that kind of exists all year long is Department of Social Services. They have emergency assistance that may be able to help with that back rent to help people stay in their home. And then if that's not something they can pay going forward, we'll discuss those different options with them and talk about, as Kelly has on the slide, we'll talk about different eviction prevention. If there is an issue with, the landlord threatening to evict, there are robust amounts of, I say robust, but there are several agencies, legal agencies that can help individuals, tenants, and even landlords just be informed and know what the process is and what it looks like if they were to get an eviction notice, what they can expect, what their rights are, and how they can best proceed to hopefully stay in their housing.
Yeah, I think that's one of the scarier things that can happen in your life is getting that eviction notice. But there's also a lot of misinformation around evictions, sometimes from landlords themselves, because they don't know or they don't want you to know. So I think it's really important, if you're talking to someone who's facing eviction or concerned about that, to call and get some reliable legal information about what the process is, what their rights are, and the kind of effect it can have on their future housing situation. So a lot of what some of the legal services are allowing someone to delay an eviction and prevent an eviction from becoming part of their housing record. Because with the housing crisis now and housing scarcity, if you have an eviction on your record, it's just going to make it that much harder to find new housing going forward. So one of the things that the legal services agencies can do in consultation with a judge is ask for, say, a 30-day stay on an eviction. So giving that person more time to find somewhere else to go before the actual eviction is carried out. I think sometimes people will get that notice and they'll think they just have 72 hours or they're getting kicked out immediately when they actually have, more time, like 30 days or something like that. But again, it's important to clarify and understand where you are in the process, what your rights are, and then also what services are available to help mitigate the harm that could happen in that particular situation.
I'd like to add too that a lot of times individuals may be working during the day and come home and they get that notice on their door, and it's after the hours when most agencies are closed. So having them know that they can call 211, that we're available 24 hours a day, to at least talk to them about that, let them know that there are places they can talk to about what their rights are and how to proceed, and so that they're well informed, so they don't have to wait and be, have anxiety all night until the next day when they can, maybe talk to somebody about that.
And I think that's something, back to that personal connection, that's a big deal. That's a big part of what 211 does is help people understand what their options are, have some sense of control or knowledge, and kind of take away some of the fear. Sometimes when people call 211, they kind of know what they have to do, but they're just looking for confirmation and to make sure they've exhausted all their options. So that's another piece that 211 does, is really helping folks understand what their options are, or giving them that nudge to say, yep, that's what you got to do. That's where we are right now. If someone is facing eviction, like Dawn said, or a mortgage foreclosure, the Departments of Social Services do have assistance available, emergency assistance. They have the ability to make one-time payments to prevent eviction or to prevent foreclosure, but you do need to be able to show that you have the ability to make those payments moving forward. So it's typically for an emergency, right? Something happened, it's preventing you from being able to pay this one time. It's not that you can't pay forever. It's not that you lost your job and you are not going to find another job. It's that, maybe you had a huge car payment that you had to make because your car broke down and you can't go to work without your car. So instead of paying your rent or your mortgage payment, you paid for your car thing and now you're behind because of that. It's not that you can't continue to make your payments. It's because an emergency happened. So it is important to access those. You do have to go to the Department of Social Services typically and apply in person though. But again, that is something that you can call 211, find out what the process is, find out what documents are required before you go down. So you have a better chance of being successful on that first attempt to make that application. Looking at some emergency housing options and help for those experiencing homelessness. New York is a right to shelter state, and we are lucky because of that. We are, we don't see family homelessness. We don't see a lot of people necessarily living in cars compared to California, compared to other states where they don't have that protection. So what that means is that if someone has a housing emergency and they find themselves homeless, they have a right to shelter, and they can access that through the local Department of Social Services. So again, going to the Department of Social Services and applying in person for that assistance. Counties also have an obligation to provide some kind of after hours homeless services, whether that's calling the county hotline or calling 211, so that if something happens and you have that eviction or you're illegally locked out of your apartment, for example, by a landlord, you have some option of somewhere to go if you have no other resources. It is a resource of last resort, I will say. So DSS is going to make sure that you have exhausted all of your savings, all of your other options before they're able to provide that assistance. But there is assistance available. Most of that assistance is going to be through shelter services. In some communities, it will be through motels. But it depends on the community, and it depends on the day and what's being utilized, quite frankly. Typically, in some ways, shelter services provides more services than a motel. A shelter is going to make sure you get 3 meals a day. A shelter may have some case management services. They're more familiar with helping people find housing so that they can get out of the shelter. Whereas if you're in a motel, you might be in first or second ring suburbs. You might have to go to DSS on a bus. There might not be affordable housing around you. And there's also no meals provided. You do get a shelter supplement allowance, but it is not a lot of money, something like $80 a week or a month. It is not significant. Many communities have folks who are homeless outreach workers who will talk to folks and see what their situation is, see if they're connected to services, see if they're getting housing assistance, if they've applied for DSS assistance, etc. And they will also make sure that they're getting fed and meals at soup kitchens.
So in Erie County, we 211 here, we have the after hours placement program through Department of Social Services. So anytime someone in Erie County who is in an emergent homeless situation calls us when DSS is closed, and then we do an intake with them and find them shelter placement, whether it's a shelter or a hotel, and place them until the next business day. Erie County does have some free shelters, and we us along with DSS work with a list of different hotels that we place people in. Niagara County also has a couple of homeless shelter options. One, you have to get go through Department of Social Services to get placed there. But for the most part, the remainder of the counties in our coverage area, they don't have homeless shelters, or they may have one that you have to access through Department of Social Services. We get a lot of calls because of our after hours program with Erie County. Other counties think that we do that all over Western New York. So a lot of that is educating folks and connecting them to the right shelters and the right process to access shelters. We also receive calls from individuals who see someone who may be sleeping on a stoop or in a park or something like that. So we provide outreach agency information for homeless outreach workers, but we also will take an extra step and email some of those outreach programs, because time is a little bit of the essence to get those folks connected to an outreach worker, to get them connected to assistance. And those individuals who are placed in hotels, we do receive a lot of calls from them to access maybe some local food pantries, or if there are any pantries that do deliver food to the hotels, because as Kelly said, they're in like first or second ring suburbs, so there's not a lot of access to resources out there. So there are some programs that will help with diapers and formula along with food, because the individuals who we've seen in the past and we're seeing now, it's not just your average single individual. Like, these are families who are being evicted with kids, and everybody has needs. So we do our best to try and connect them to those services so they can get those needs met.
Mm-hmm. And one of the surprising things I learned in working in this field was that sometimes you have to even pay for your shelter. So if you're working and you have some income, you may be required to pay a per diem for those shelter services. So if you are in that situation, DSS will do a calculation to figure out what that per diem is. Again, there are civil legal service agencies that will also check that calculation to ensure that you are accessing all of the benefits that you are eligible for, and not paying money that you can ill afford to pay for shelter services. Back in January of 2016, Governor Cuomo declared Executive Order 151, which is essentially code blue services. So in New York State, during winter weather from typically end of October to
November 15th, I think, to April 30th.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, I think it's anytime the temperature is below 32 degrees. So anytime the temperature is below 32 degrees or including wind chill, there are extra safeties available through the state and through the state departments of social services. And these safety services are to prevent anyone from sleeping outside at night during these cold weather days. Ideally to prevent cold weather fatalities. So, like I said, New York is a right to shelter state. However, folks do need to comply with Department of Social Services and fulfill some requirements in order to continue to receive that shelter. So some things are doing a housing search, trying to show, providing proof that you have done a housing search and you're trying to do that while you're in shelter. Not everyone is able or capable of doing that or wants to do that. So there are folks who would prefer not to work with the Department of Social Services to maintain continued shelter, and they can be discontinued from their shelter benefits by the Department of Social Services. So during the winter nights, when it is cold and over 32 degrees, or when it is above 32 degrees, they could conceivably be ineligible for shelter placement because they are not they're not fulfilling those requirements. On nights when there is a code blue, anyone can get shelter. Everyone is able to access particular shelters, or the county is required to make accommodations so that no one is staying outside at night. So whether that's putting folks in a motel for the night until the next day, or opening code blue shelters, those are available. So across New York State, you can call 211 to find out if a code blue is in effect in a particular community. And if so, what resources are available for folks so that they don't have to spend the night outside. 211 Western New York offers a text alert for code blue. And I'll let Dawn talk about that.
Yep. So for the city of Buffalo and Erie County, you can opt in to 898-211 with the phrase code blue Buffalo. And we actually here are responsible with calling code blue for Erie County and the city of Buffalo. So we take a look at the wind chill. And if it is 32 or below, then we call the code blue for that evening and push out the messaging to anybody who has opted into that alert message that it is a code blue. And these are the shelters that are open in the time frame they're open. If it is cold during the day, then they do offer daytime warming as well. And even when there isn't like a code blue for daytime, there are options for warming shelters that are centers that are open, like libraries or different senior centers or community centers or things like that. So that texting option is a great option for folks to stay aware of what's happening in the community. We also are connected to a code blue van. So those individuals, if someone's out and about and they see someone out who's homeless in the cold when it's a code blue, they can call 211, give us a location, and we can let the code blue van know where that individual is. So they can go check on them. They're not going to force them in a van and take them somewhere, but they are going to talk to them about what options are available and what centers are open for them to stay warm. And anytime in the winter, so a lot of times people think about homeless individuals and code blue shelters as for those individuals who are chronically homeless or just don't want to comply with housing searches or anything with DSS. But think about the individuals whose furnace may have broken, and they don't have heat, it's not safe for them to stay in that. It's not safe and not necessary for them to stay in that cold place, and not everyone has a support system that they can call on to have a place to stay. So that's also what these are used for. And then they're placed for that night and then connected with resources the next day. So if it is like a heating issue or a landlord issue or some health and safety issue in their home, then services can be in place to help them rectify those so they can go back to their housing.
Help for the holidays. So I think another thing I learned when starting working for 211 is that if you need help for the holidays, you need to start planning early. You have to be more scheduled and well planned than the average Joe. So a lot of places, there are agencies that will provide assistance with holiday meals or food for the holidays, whether that's Thanksgiving or Christmas or other holidays that you're celebrating. But typically you have to sign up early. Some places are taking registrations or started taking registrations for Thanksgiving dinners or Thanksgiving baskets last week, and they might stop taking those registrations as soon as this week. And similar for help for the holidays for toys. There are typically agencies, Toys for Tots programs, etc., that will help families, provide toys for their kids during the winter holidays. But again, there's applications, you have to apply early, you need required documents, etc. So 211 is a primary point of information for all of these programs. There are options available, I think, but it's important to call early. Dawn, do you want to talk about some of the 211's holiday help locally?
Yeah. We are a part of the Western New York Holiday Partnership. So we work with the Buffalo News Neediest Fund and Wegmans and the Marines for Toys for Tots. We actually have Santa's Warehouse a little bit. We help coordinate the local agencies who are going to provide the holiday gifts to families. And throughout the year, we will talk to callers and if they have kids, or especially if it's getting close to like September, October, we'll ask them about children and if they need help for the holidays. So we add them to a list so that when we do have the holiday toy signups available, that information, we can push that out to those individuals to let them know, like, hey, signups are ready now. This is what you need to have with you when you sign up. These are the locations that are closest to you. Because I'll tell you, there's nothing more heartbreaking than the 23rd and 24th of December, talking to moms, dads, grandmas, custodial guardians of these kids who just don't have anything for their kids, and they had no idea that something like this existed. So we do our very best to push out information about that this help is available, and this is how you go about getting that assistance, and to call 211 for that assistance, and heavy push on social media and everything we can do to try to get folks connected. And it's the same thing for the holiday baskets. A lot of people don't think about it until the last minute, or they thought they'd have funds to buy a turkey or buy a ham, or and they don't have those things. So we just really encourage people to sign up early. There are holiday meals that are also available. There's one in Buffalo called the Turkey Express. So they'll deliver a hot Thanksgiving meal. There are also community meals that are available for folks to go, and especially great for those individuals who are alone at the holidays, and this is a way for them to go and have a meal with other folks and have that community feel. So there are options available, and we just really encourage people to reach out early to get that information so that they can get the help they need around the holidays.
And a lot of times, not only is 211 providing assistance or providing information about what's available, but they're actually also doing the intake process. So a lot of times 211 is actually registering the household for that program or that assistance. And that's, more and more we're seeing 211 being utilized for that remote access to services, which we think is great because you know, transportation is a burden and it's a lot of time to go to a place and apply for something. So anything that can happen online or over the phone with 211, we want to help folks with that. So we got a question about where we post this information. Do we have a Facebook page? Yes, 211 does have a Facebook page. I'll let Don put a link to, or I will put a link to the 211 Facebook page. I think we might also have Twitter and LinkedIn, but we'll definitely provide that information for you as well. So how can you use 211 to serve your patrons? I think the main question is call or look it up yourself. So you guys are information specialists, and our 211 resource databases are available online. So the primary site nationwide is 211.org, and that will link you to a local 211 provider, whether that's Western New York or Southern Florida or wherever. So you can put in a zip code and find the 211 that you're looking for. The benefits to the 211 resource database are that it's fast, free, and available 24/7. So it is not a database that you need to subscribe to or pay for your patrons to access or for you to access. It's freely available. It's comprehensive and up to date, and each of those resources is going to have a date when it was last reviewed by the agency itself. So you can have, some degree of certainty about how current the information is that you're providing someone. The websites have keyword search capacity, so you can type in keywords to find what you're looking for, but they also have guided searches, which I strongly recommend, and we'll show you kind of the housing guided searches. And the guided searches rely on our taxonomy, which I'll show you in a second. You can also limit the results by geography. So Don mentioned asking folks their zip code. So that's a key point of information that we take to find resources that are close and that folks are eligible for, because a lot of services are dependent on where someone lives. 211 databases are centrally managed and consistent. So each 211 center has a data curator who is reviewing the information from the agencies, making sure that the information is presented in a way that meets our 211 style guide, that it's non-biased and neutral, that it has all of the information currently and consistent. And 211 also avoids costly duplication. So we all know that everyone has their lists that they keep up to date and they spend time looking up and updating them. But really, we'd like to encourage you to check out 211, because maybe you don't need an intern to update that list anymore. Maybe you can just look at 211 and find that current information right there. So what kind of information is in the 211 database? Not just agency name, but also address, phone numbers, contact names, days and hours of operation, description of services, that really important eligibility and fees, because again, we don't want to send folks to places that they're not eligible for. The taxonomy service term, and then we also try to link to the agency or program webpage, so that if someone needs more information, they can just click that link easily and get to their webpage. And then again, of course, the date that the record was updated, so you know how current that information is. Here's an example of the 211 taxonomy, the 211 Los Angeles County Taxonomy of Human Services. So basically, this is kind of the Dewey Decimal System for human needs. So we start with basic needs, criminal justice and legal services, education, and you can drill down. So from basic needs, we go to food, housing, material goods, transportation, utilities. And then if we look at housing, it breaks it down like this. So all of the services are indexed with a taxonomy code so that we can reliably and easily look up those services while we're talking to someone who might be in crisis on the phone. But it also makes it easy for you to leverage this taxonomy when you're searching for services on our websites. And Don talked a little bit about what it's like to call 211, but I'll let her speak to that again.
So folks that contact 211 in Western New York, and it's probably similar across the state. So they can dial 211, and then they get a small menu, real simple. I think we have 3 options. You're pretty much probably going to get the same person no matter what option you hit. So thank you for calling 211 Western New York. This is Dawn. How can I help you? And then, we allow the individual time to chat. We then ask them what their zip code is and ask them a bunch of questions to see, what their needs are. And by asking them a bunch of questions, we're not interrogating anybody. It's really just a conversation like you would have with your best friend or your cousin or something like that. It's really important for us to build that rapport with the individual on the phone, so they have that feeling that they're talking to their friend or someone in their family, or we're not a stranger. We're someone that we care about the issue that you're having, and how we can best help you find solutions to that issue that you're having. So whether that there are programs that do exist in the community to help them, and if there aren't, then we're going to problem solve and continue that conversation with them about maybe other natural resources or other things that they could see to help that issue. There's a lot of frustration that people get when they do talk to their neighbor or their friend and they get told to go here, there, and everywhere. And then they'll call us and talk about how frustrated they are because they were told to call here, there, and everywhere and didn't get any help. And in a couple minutes, we can find them programs that they're eligible for, that the hours work what they need, and to help them just alleviate that stress and that frustration to get the help that they need with their issues. And that's really what we're about, is having that personal connection with the folks, validating their feelings, letting them know they're not alone and that there is help available.
So I think when you're considering a patron in front of you who has a question or a problem, think about what Dawn said. Is it a small problem that you think you just need to look up a resource for, or does it seem like it's something overwhelming that someone really needs to talk to someone? If they need that personal touch and they need more time than you're able to give them, that's what 211 is for. We're happy to talk to that person, ask them those probing questions. And frequently, what we're finding is that folks call and they ask one question, but really they have a whole bunch of needs that led to that initial question. So the staff at 211 are really adept at identifying those underlying causes and those surrounding issues that brought the person to the point of asking that particular question. So when you don't know necessarily what you're looking for, or the problem seems really big, or the person looks like they just want to talk to someone, that's a good time to have them recommend they call 211. Maybe you have a private space that they can go to, or maybe you just give them a little 211 card and say, here, I think they can help you. If it's a really concrete question and issue, or you've used the 211 website and you're really confident in that, go for it. Look at our 211 website and find that resource for the person, just like you would, or show them how to use it, just like you would any online database at the library. Some other ways that 211s can support, or that libraries can support 211, become a 211 champion. 211 has been around for 23 years in our country, and most people still have no idea it exists. So tonight at dinner or over the next few days, just tell a few people about 211, this resource that you learned about. Chances are they've never even heard of it before. We are also happy to provide brochures to keep in your libraries, posters to hang in your libraries. Maybe you want to hang posters in the bathrooms at your library. I don't know, something to read while you're doing your business. Link to the local 211 website on your library's homepage or your library's page, or include 211 in your list of databases that your library has access to, provides access to, or subscribes to. Definitely use 211 when you have patrons that have social service needs in your library, especially when they're asking for you. And again, just share 211 with your networks. We are happy to do a presentation, and it can be, you know, as brief as 15 minutes at the start of, you know, a meeting or something like that. Whether we Zoom in or come to the meeting. Dawn and I like to travel about Western New York, so we're always happy for an invitation. And I think that's it for us today. So any questions or thoughts or comments? We're here till the end of the hour.
Yes, please feel free to put any other questions you have in the chat, or if you're more comfortable at this time, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions that way, if that's easier. I do have one question. If libraries would like to request more copies of posters or brochures, how should they go about that?
That's a great question. I can put my contact information in the chat. If they are not in Western New York, they can contact me. And if they are in Western New York, they can contact me also, but I'm sure Dawn will put her contact information in the chat too. I think most of our 211 websites also have a contact us page on their website where you can contact the center for non-211 questions or request materials through a form directly on their websites.
Great, thank you. All right. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. But thank you so much, Kelly and Dawn, for this wonderful program. It's very informative. And I know last time we shared the slides out with the recording, which I think would be very helpful if we're able to do that again. So everyone can look for a recording. If you have colleagues that weren't able to join us live, but did register, they'll get a copy of the recording as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share what we do.
Yeah, thank you. And I did put a link in the chat to an evaluation survey just for us. So if you have any feedback from today's program, please take one moment to fill it out. I promise it's very quick.
And thank you to all the librarians for all you guys do every day.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.